Hello and welcome to my video 10 Haunted Dolls. This video was suggested by my subscriber Awesome Style as well as Dean T. Number 10. Pupa. Pupa was made in the 1920s in the likeness of its young owner. The girl who owned the doll kept it with her until her death in 2005. While alive, the woman stated that Pupa was her best friend and would carry on conversations with her. After the woman's death, the family put Pupa in a glass case in their home. It is stated that she would move around in her enclosed box and has made it known that she wants out. The family says sometimes, inexplicably, the glass will be fogged up and written on the glass will be Pupa hate. Other times they state you will hear tapping on the glass and look back to find Pupa's hands on the glass pane. One family member claims to have videotaped the doll's movements, but every time he tries to upload it, a strange fog obscures the recorded video with the words, "Pupa, no," written in it. Number 9. Mandy. This doll was made around 1910, and if legends are true, has a terrible story behind it. It goes that a young girl and her doll got locked in the basement, to which the girl died before being found. What led people to discover this tragedy was the fact that they had heard crying coming from the basement. After getting the door open, they found the girl dead, but this doll was said to be crying tears of blood. Years later, the current owner of the doll donated it to the Queensland Museum in British Columbia. She stated that she constantly heard crying in her house and it was originating from the doll. After donating Mandy, the reports state that the original owner never heard the crying again, but the museum started to have problems. Things would come up missing, footsteps would be heard when no one was around, and electronics would malfunction while in Mandy's presence. The museum goes as far as to say that Mandy must be housed alone since she will cause harm to any other doll she is in contact with. Number 8. Ted the Clown. There isn't much backstory on this doll, but it does encompass 3 things that most people dislike: dolls, clowns, and it being alive. Ted was bought and sold a few times, but all owners state that the doll moves around. At one point, a recent owner decided to test out his theory and placed Ted in the corner. After a while, he came back and the clown had moved 3 feet away from his previous location. While Ted hasn't shown a harmful side, the last owner placed him in a closet just for the fact that he didn't trust him being free. Number 7. Island of Dolls. The story of this area is up for debate, but it goes as follows. A man by the name of Don Julian Santana Barrera found a young girl drowned in the waters on the island. He found the girl's doll floating in the water as well and hung it to a tree in a form of respect for the girl. Not long after this, the spirit of the girl would haunt Julian, and he started collecting and hanging more dolls in an attempt to appease the spirit. He soon took notice that the dolls themselves seemed to be possessed by the girl's spirit, so he started hanging more and more. It is said after 50 years of doing this, in 2001, Julian was found dead of apparent drowning in the same location of the girl's death. Some state that the dolls will move by themselves, that their eyes will blink, and even turn to watch anyone walking around. Reports go so far as saying that sometimes at night you can hear the dolls whispering to each other. Number 6. Murder Me Elmo. When most people think about Sesame Street and all of its furry monsters, normally the last thing you would think of is death. One of these monsters is a popular character named Elmo, who for many years was possibly the most popular resident of the show. With that came many variations of toys which would sing, dance, and laugh at your touch. One such toy was called Elmo Knows Your Name, in which it would recognize your child's name and address him or her as such. The Bowman family bought one for their 2-year-old son named James and discovered Elmo's darker side. After replacing the batteries after they had died, Elmo became hateful. It was soon noticed that the doll would say "kill" before James's name in everything he said. It even went as far as singing "Kill James" most of the time in operation. The company who made the doll, Fisher-Price, couldn't figure out what was going on with it, and they offered the family a voucher for another one. Reports don't say if they took them up on that offer. I wouldn't. Number 5. Haunted Dollhouse. While most people tend to stay away from anything possessed, there is a family in Pennsylvania that collects such objects. The family are paranormal investigators, and they have devoted their lives to collecting and studying cursed dolls. The most famous are 7 by the name of Crystal, True, Monica, Charla, Isaac, Lily, Ashley, and Cameron. Each one of the dolls is said to be inhabited by different entities. The family has a webcam set up that you can watch to see if anything strange is going on. The most activity seen has been things missing in the house, strange sounds, and apparitions around the dolls. At one point, the spirit of a young boy appeared at the bottom of the staircase, and in another situation, he showed up behind the dolls. Crystal is said to be possessed by a 19-year-old woman who drowned when her car left the roadway and landed in a swollen river. True has the spirit of a 17-year-old girl who was abused much of her life and finally killed due to the abuse. Monica is a 12-year-old girl who died when she ran after a ball got hit on the road. Charla is said to be a 12-year-old girl who died in a fire in 1902 and then was brought back to life in the form of a doll by 2 witches. Isaac is an 11-year-old drummer boy who died in the Civil War. Ashley and Cameron encompass the spirits of a brother and sister who died together in a car accident. Number 4. OKiku. This doll comes from Japan. The story goes that in 1918, a 17-year-old boy named Akishi Suzuki bought this doll for his 2-year-old sister, OKiku. The girl loved the doll very much and played with it for years. Sadly, she later became ill and died due to the flu. The family put the doll in the altar for their daughter. Oddly enough, they soon noticed that the doll's hair started to grow. Even if the hair was cut, it would grow to about the knees. The family felt that their deceased daughter's spirit had transferred to it. At one point, unable to get rid of the doll, the family brought it to a Mandy temple. To this day, the OKiku doll is still on display at the temple, and the cutting of the hair is a regular task for the priest. At one point, the hair was sent out for analysis, and it was found to actually have human hair. Number 3. Harold. This is the first haunted doll ever sold on eBay. The original story was that the man who was selling Harold had bought him at a flea market from a guy who had bought it for his son a year prior to his death. After the purchase, the seller claimed incidents such as a pet's death and his girlfriend leaving could be blamed on Harold. For many, this story seemed hard to believe, and it later came out that he hoaxed it just to make the sale. Flash forward, the woman who bought Harold also didn't believe in the possession, but later thinks it to be cursed. The woman stated that a perfectly fit friend came over and after handling Harold suffered a fatal brain tumor. Another friend fell down a flight of stairs and died after her exposure to Harold. At one point, the owner stated she heard rustling sounds downstairs one night. When she descended the stairs, she saw Harold sitting in a chair, smiling at her. It is said Harold cannot be burned and has gained the attention of many paranormal investigators. It has even made an appearance on the show Ghost Adventures, where the crew took Harold with them on their investigation of the previously mentioned Island of the Dolls. Number 2. Robert the Doll. Robert is something from nightmares for many of the people. The doll originally belonged to a painter named Robert Eugene, or Gene, Otto, and it was given to him at the age of 10. It is said his parents were cruel to his servants, and in fact a servant who practiced voodoo gave this doll to Robert. As a boy, he woke to find Robert at the foot of his bed, and his mother soon heard her son screaming. When she got to his room, the door was locked, and could hear things being thrown about inside the room. She finally managed to get in to find her son huddled up, with Robert at the foot of the bed still, and the room destroyed. Gene grew close to his doll and even kept it with him after his parents passed away. Later in life, Gene married a woman named Anne, and she hated the doll, stating it wanted to do her harm and would even change its expression to a grimace when facing her. Anne finally managed to get Gene to agree to keep Robert in the attic, but even as such, they would hear something walking back and forth up there. Guests reported hearing the walking sound, as well as a demonic laughing coming from the attic. It is said he would be seen staring out the windows and would taunt passersby. At times, Gene would find Robert in a rocking chair, put him back in the attic, and as soon as he got back to the chair, would find Robert sitting there once again. When Gene died in 1972, another family bought his house, and a 10-year-old girl found Robert in the attic and claimed him for herself. Stories don't go into detail what exactly happened, but the girl, who is now a grown woman, says the doll is alive and tried to harm her, and is still traumatized by it to this day. Robert now resides at the Key West Martello Museum behind glass. It is said many people who try to take photos of him have their devices fail to work, or if you don't ask Robert's permission first, tragedy will befall you. Near Robert's enclosure is a wall of letters sent by people cursed by Robert, begging for him to forgive them. Number 1. Voodoo Zombie Doll. A woman in Galveston, Texas bought a zombie voodoo doll from eBay in which it was said to be possessed by a spirit that was very active, to which it was almost alive. After receiving her purchase, she found the doll enclosed in a silver metal box with explicit directions to never open it up. The woman failed to follow these rules and immediately was attacked by the doll. She put it back in the box only for it to start coming to her in her nightmares. At one point she tried to burn it, but it wouldn't burn. She tried cutting it apart, but the scissors broke. The woman went as far as burying it, only to find it laying on her front doorstep the next day. The owner tried to sell it on eBay, but every time the winning bidder received the box, it was empty, and the woman would find the doll back at her house. Paranormal investigators have come to look at the doll and told her that there was nothing they could or would do to help her. At one point, a priest was called in to bless the box and doll, but that didn't work either. To this day, she has it locked in her attic and says she hopes to move to another house and leave the doll behind. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.